"You're nobody here," the chief physician spat, his voice sharp and full of contempt. "Get out of this hospital." Dorothy took a step back. The hallway fell deathly silent. Nurses, orderlies, even patients froze, afraid to move. Standing across from her, the chief physician was crimson with rage, his fists clenched. Just moments ago, he'd done something he had never done before, he slapped her. The sting still burned on her cheek, but the humiliation cut even deeper. "Why?" she whispered, her voice trembling. He sneered. "Because you've gotten too bold," he growled. "You're just a janitor. Your job is to mop floors, not give me orders." He didn't care for her explanation. His mind was made up. Security. Get her out of here. The two guards near the front desk hesitated. One finally stepped toward her. "Mrs. Johnson." Dorothy didn't budge. She wasn't going to leave quietly. She had given this hospital 20 years of her life. She came here young, when her son had just started school. Worked day and night. Not a doctor, not a nurse, just a janitor. But the patients knew her name. "You're like an angel," elderly patients would often tell her. She never refused help, even when it wasn't her job. She covered for nurses who fell behind. She kept the place spotless. Not once in 2 decades had anyone spoken ill of her, except for one person, the chief physician. He ruled with cruelty and fear. The staff kept quiet, afraid of losing their jobs. No one wanted to go through the hassle of finding another hospital, writing reports, sitting through humiliating interviews. So, they endured. But Dorothy couldn't endure anymore, not after what she saw that morning. It happened in the internal medicine department during routine rounds. Dorothy was changing linens when she overheard shouting from the doctor's room. The voice belonged to Carol, a young nurse, new to the job and unaware of how things worked around here. "I can't," Carol said, frightened. "The patient's condition is deteriorating. He needs additional tests." "Not my problem," the chief snapped. "The family has no insurance. No tests." Dorothy froze at the doorway. She knew the patient, an old man, alone, no money, no family. The chief had decided he wasn't worth the resources. Carol protested. "But he could die without proper diagnostics." The chief narrowed his eyes. "Then he'll die. Happens all the time here." Dorothy felt something break inside her. How could anyone be so heartless? She couldn't stay silent. She burst into the room. "You can't say things like that," her voice steady. He turned slowly. "And who the hell do you think you are?" "You're a doctor," she said, stepping forward. "Your job is to heal, not count dollars. You don't get to decide who's worthy of help." Carol glanced at her in fear. The chief physician rose from his seat. "I decide who lives and who dies," he said. "And you're just a janitor who talks too much." He stepped toward her. Before Dorothy could move, he struck her across the face. She wasn't just fired, she was thrown out like a misbehaving schoolgirl. The guards escorted her to the door, avoiding eye contact. "Sorry, Mrs. Johnson," one of them whispered. She said nothing. Outside, nurses and staff stood quietly. No one spoke, but their eyes told the story, they knew she was right. Yet no one dared defend her. The silence was suffocating. She walked away, but she knew, it wasn't over. That night, the phone rang. An unknown number. "Mrs. Johnson?" A deep male voice. "Yes," she said cautiously. "Meet me at the hospital tomorrow. We need to talk." She went cold. "Who is this?" A pause. "You'll see." Click. She couldn't sleep. Who was he? What did he want? Why now? When dawn came, she got up and made coffee, trying to shake off the anxiety. But something inside her knew, she had to go back. She wasn't garbage. She needed to find out what was happening, then she'd decide what to do. By the time Dorothy reached the hospital, the city was waking up. Wet autumn leaves blew across the pavement. The hospital looked the same, but felt unfamiliar. She hesitated at the door. Nurses smoking on the steps fell silent when they saw her. Some looked away. Others held their breath. Dorothy said nothing and walked inside. Something was off in the ER. No usual bustle. Staff whispered in corners, glancing nervously at the chief's office. "Mrs. Johnson." She turned. A tall man in a sleek coat stood in front of her, his eyes sharp. "Were you the one who called me last night?" He nodded. "Come with me." She followed. He opened a door, motioned her inside. Dorothy froze. Behind the desk sat the chief physician, pale, rattled, trying to keep his composure. The man who brought her in turned to him coldly. "Explain yourself, Dr. Miller." Dorothy's heart skipped. Dr. Miller, the chief. This man, he was the hospital's owner. Miller cleared his throat. It was a misunderstanding. The owner narrowed his eyes. A misunderstanding? He looked at Dorothy. "Is this the janitor you humiliated yesterday?" She tensed. The chief shifted in his chair. "It's not what you think," he stammered. "Really?" the owner said coolly. "Then explain it to me." Dorothy stayed silent. This wasn't what she expected. "It's an internal issue." "Not worth your attention," Miller tried. "Not worth my attention," the owner smirked. "Then why did I receive a formal complaint yesterday?" Dorothy gasped. Someone had spoken up. Miller flushed. "It's lies. All of it." "Let me read it to you," the owner said, pulling a printed sheet from his folder. "The chief physician routinely neglects his duties, denies patients necessary care based on their insurance status, belittles staff, and resorts to physical violence." Dorothy covered her mouth. Everyone knew, but no one had dared say it. Until now. "Do you know how long I've owned this hospital?" Miller hissed. "Which is exactly why it's time you left," the owner replied calmly. "You're firing me. I'm removing you." The owner stood. This hospital deserves someone who actually cares about patients. Miller shot up. "And who's that?" The owner looked at Dorothy. "Mrs. Johnson." Silence. "Excuse me," she asked. "You have the experience, the respect of the staff, and most importantly, a conscience." She shook her head. "I'm just a janitor." "Were. Now you're the new department head." She couldn't speak. The chief physician was shaking with fury. "This is a joke. She's not a doctor. She's nothing." "Get out," the owner said. The chief clenched his fists, but didn't argue. He had lost, and he knew it. After he left, Dorothy asked quietly, "Why are you doing this?" The owner smiled. "Don't you remember me, Mrs. Johnson?" She stared at him. Her heart froze. "You." He nodded. Years ago, she cared for him when his mother was in intensive care. Now he was returning the favor. "Now it's my turn to protect you," he said. For the first time in years, Dorothy believed justice was real. Dorothy still couldn't believe it. The little boy she once comforted by his mother's bedside, now he was her lifeline. Her rescuer. But could she really accept this? She looked up at him. "Are you sure I can do this?" He gave her a soft, confident smile. "I know you can." But her mind was racing. Why her? Why not a doctor? Why would the owner of the hospital risk everything for someone like her? "I need time to think," she said. He nodded. Of course. But don't take too long. She didn't ask what he meant, she already knew. Out in the hallway, Dr. Miller was unraveling. "You're all traitors," he shouted, his voice cracking. Nurses flinched, avoiding his path. He grabbed a few by the arm, demanding support, but they all turned away. "I ran this place for 20 years, he bellowed. "You think this hospital will survive without me?" A security guard shifted uneasily. "Mr. Anderson said you need to leave." "Mr. Anderson?" Miller mocked. "You think I'm scared of him?" But he was scared. Dorothy saw it in his eyes. The fear of a man who had lost everything. And with it, the rage. He turned to her. "You did this." She didn't flinch. "I only told the truth." He scoffed. "Truth? No one wants the truth." Dorothy said nothing. She turned her back to him, because he no longer mattered. But as she stepped into the hallway, something had changed. The staff looked at her differently. Not just with sympathy, but with respect. Someone gave her a nod. Another lowered their eyes, as if silently apologizing for their silence before. She felt a light touch on her elbow. It was Carol, the young nurse. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up back then," she whispered. Dorothy shook her head. "Now you know how things should be." Carol nodded, voice trembling. "If you stay, we'll feel safer." Dorothy didn't answer. The weight of responsibility pressed on her. If she walked away, nothing would change. But if she stayed, she wasn't sure she was ready. All day, she wrestled with the decision. That evening, she heard a voice behind her. "It's hard, isn't it?" She turned. Mr. Anderson stood by the window, looking out over the city. "I don't want to make a mistake," she admitted. He gave a wry smile. "You already made one." Her heart skipped. "What do you mean?" He turned to her, eyes steady. "You've already decided. You're just afraid to say it out loud." She dropped her shoulders. He was right. Deep down, she knew she had made her choice. "Why me?" she asked again. He smiled gently. "Because you once saved me. Now it's my turn." Dorothy nodded. And for the first time in years, she didn't feel alone. The hospital began to change. Dr. Miller left, surprisingly without a scene. He muttered something about how they'd regret this, how everything would fall apart without him. But no one listened. As the doors shut behind him, the department seemed to exhale. There were no tears. No sorrow. Just a quiet sense of freedom. "He's really gone," someone whispered. "We can finally work like we should." Dorothy stood by the window, listening. She couldn't believe it, but she knew she'd done the right thing. The next morning, she arrived early. Nurses, aides, even interns gathered in the hallway, unsure of what to expect. She felt their eyes, some hopeful, some wary. But she knew one thing, she couldn't let them down. "Good morning," she said, her voice firm. Everyone fell silent. "We're doing things differently now." A quiet ripple went through the corridor. She raised a hand for silence. "That means every patient will get the care they need. No one will be told they're not worth saving." A physician in internal medicine looked at his colleague. They both nodded. "What about insurance?" someone asked cautiously. A new voice answered. "Administration will handle it." They all turned. Mr. Anderson stood in the chief's doorway. "From now on, medical care comes first. You shouldn't have to fight for what should be freely given." Silence. And then, someone clapped. Slowly. Then more joined in. Dorothy froze, a lump forming in her throat. She wasn't used to this. But she realized, it wasn't about her. It was about all of them. Together. They would no longer stay silent. That evening, she finally allowed herself to breathe. Alone in the office, she was sorting papers when someone knocked. Yes. Carol peeked in. May I? Dorothy smiled. Of course. What is it? Carol fidgeted with her sleeve. I just wanted to say, thank you. Dorothy looked surprised. For what? Carol met her gaze. For not being afraid. For giving us a chance to work with dignity. Dorothy's smile was warm. I didn't do it alone. We all did this, together. Carol nodded and stepped out. Dorothy watched her go, her heart full. For the first time in years, her work hadn't been in vain. The hospital was changing. Slowly, but surely. Staff no longer feared speaking out. Patients felt seen. Heard. Cared for. And Dorothy was no longer just the janitor. She was the one they looked up to. The one who didn't bend, didn't stay silent when it mattered. She didn't betray who she was. And now she knew, it had all been worth it. Sometimes, a single word can change everything. Sometimes, one decision can break a system and bring justice back to life. Have you ever faced injustice at work? How did you handle it? Share your story in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.